Hi guys, it's Miss Silverthorn. We are starting our last unit for the year, which is about evolution. This tends to be for some a controversial issue. Um, so I'm obviously a religious person. I obviously believe in God. I'm Muslim. What I'm going to present to you as evolution or the theory of evolution is the facts. Now remember, theory. This is really important. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves, is theory does not mean just an idea or a guess. Okay, so when someone says, oh, that's just a theory, it's not true, they don't know if it's true. In terms of science, yes, we do know it to be true. We do know it to be a fact. Okay, theory means that lots and lots of scientists have done lots and lots of experiments, have lots and lots of data, have lots and lots of observations, all of this evidence to come together to explain a phenomenon. In this case, to explain the theory of evolution. So the very last set of notes that you're going to take for this unit is going to be it's going to give you the evidence, or the main parts of the evidence. There's lots of evidence out there. If you were to go to college, you could take a whole semester class studying evolution. It goes into, there's a lot more intricacies involved in evolution. I'm just going to present to you the basics. Okay, and I'll probably mention this multiple times throughout this unit because it is very important that you understand how evolution works, especially because there is such a huge misconception of what evolution is. Many people say, well, I don't believe in evolution, without really understanding what evolution really is. Because there has been a misconception portrayed by the media, which we will get into in a later note. For this set of notes, we're going to be talking about the history of evolutionary thought. Okay, so Charles Darwin kind of marks where we see evolution, that's the scientist, the person who most people think of when they think of evolution. So we're going to talk about all the people that came before Darwin. What was the thought process of other scientists before Darwin that helped Darwin when he developed his ideas? Okay, so early ideas, we have Aristotle. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher. He believed that species were fixed creations arranged by their complexities. Now, depending on religious beliefs, some people believe this still to be true, that, a human, like us as a human species, hasn't changed, okay? And that no organism on Earth has ever changed, okay? So examples, earthworms are less complex than snakes. That's what we mean by complexity. Okay, his ideas lasted approximately 2,000 years. Now, why did these ideas last so long? Well, the lack of technology, right? Without until the advancement of technology, scientists weren't able to perform experiments to properly, what's the word I'm looking for? To properly explain how species developed. Okay, so this idea from Aristotle that species were fixed, did not change, and went from order of simple to complex, thinking of earthworms as being very simple, but snakes are much more complex. Okay, this leads us to, I can never say his name, Carolus Linnaeus. He's the first one to group similar organisms and assign them Latin names. Okay, so every species has at least a two-word name. This is their scientific name, their genus species. Ours, for example, is Homo sapien, right? When we say we're Homo sapiens, Homo is the genus that we belong to. Sapien is actually our species. So the whole thing, most people refer to as our species name, but the Homo part is actually the genus that we belong to. After Linnaeus developed this organizational system, it got a little bit more complicated with time, but this is the generic, not the generic, this is till this day the way that we name new species. So if a new species is discovered, it is given a Latin name, and it is given a genus and a species name, depending on its classification. Okay, this leads us to Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell proposed the theory of uniformitarianism, and now next year when you take Earth and Space Science, we're going to talk about uniformitarianism again. The Earth and Space Science students just actually were tested on this, and this is the idea that geological processes that have happened on Earth, that happened 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, a million years ago, are the exact same processes that are happening now, and that these processes happen at a pretty uniform rate, and they help wear down Earth's crust and build it up. So the building up of all like volcanoes and the wearing down due to like wind and water. Okay, he proposed that the Earth was millions of years old instead of a few thousand years old. At the time that he proposed this, he was kind of laughed at. It was not seen as a popular opinion. It wasn't until much, much later, until well after his death, through the advancement of technology, that we were to radioactive date to learn that yes, Earth is actually about 4.6 billion years old. So we're not even millions of years old. We're billion of years old. The Earth is very, very, very old. And we'll talk about radioactive dating. You'll learn more what that process is in both chemistry and Earth and Space Science next year. But do keep in mind that this helped lead Darwin to develop some of the thinking behind evolution. Okay. The Principles of Geology is a book that Lyell published. And before the Beagle set sail, the Beagle is a ship that Charles Darwin wrote on. And Charles Darwin read this book of Principles of Geology that explains how these geological processes shaped the Earth. Whoops. Okay. Now, this helped Darwin understand, for example, how in the world, in the Andes Mountains, that are 12,000 feet above sea level, how are people finding seashells? And that's through these geological processes that have changed Earth. Okay, to this day, Earth is changing, right? The structure of Earth is changing. We have, the San Andreas Fault in California. We have Hawaii, who has volcanoes erupting. All of these things cause changes on Earth. Very, 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 very slowly, but they still cause change. And these principles of geology helped Darwin with his theory of evolution. Okay. This also expanded Earth's age. Again, the Earth at this time was considered to be only a couple thousand years old. When through Lyell's the one that proposed it was millions, and we now know that it's actually billions. We're 4.6 billion years old. It's this law of use of disuse. He said if you use something, the body part becomes stronger. If you don't use it, it deteriorates. So this idea of, okay, if I use my arm, right, to grow or to become stronger, right, when you will build muscle, right, but you're not going to magically grow a third arm, right? And if you stop using your arm's not going to disappear, right? And even if you did stop using your arm, you can't pass that off to your child, right? You build muscle, your baby is not going to be more muscular when it's born. And that's what Lamarck thought, is that a person could kind of decide on a trait, an organism could decide that, hey, they want this trait, and if they acquire this trait, then they can pass it off to their babies. Again, that this idea, right, is not possible. Whoops, I'm going to go back, sorry. I keep going forward. Now, the only thing I want to mention here about mutations, because I am going to, just because of time, I'm leaving mutations out of, usually we would cover it in between protein synthesis and evolution. because it is to understand that mutations provide change, right? And that change doesn't have to be good or bad. Most people think of mutations as bad. That's not necessarily true. Some mutations are good. You think of humans, for example. Actually, I think of cats as an example. Some cats are born with a thumb. You can Google that, cats with thumbs. And that doesn't hurt the cat, right? It's not bad for the cat to have a thumb. So that's something to keep in mind. Not all mutations are bad mutations, but all mutations occur before an organism is born. Any mutations that occur after is going to result in cancer. So cancer is the when a mutation has happened after an organism is born. Not all cancer, okay? But that's like when we say, don't smoke, right? Smoking causes a mutation in your, or can cause a mutation in your lungs, which can cause lung cancer. Okay, exposing yourself to the sun for long periods or sun tanning can cause skin cancer. That's causing a change in your cells, in your DNA. So something to keep in mind, DNA mutations occur before you are born. Okay, those mutations can be either good or bad or in between. Any mutation that occurs after you're born, okay, is going to end up resulting in cancer because it's not supposed to happen after you're born. Okay, so these two ideas kind of emerge at the same time. Malthus applied more, he studied humans as opposed to organisms or animals or plants. If you ever take an economics class, especially at the college level, you'll also talk about Malthus. So he's kind of, he's an economist. So again, if you ever take an economics class, a finance class, Malthus does come up. Now, he observed that babies being born, you had more babies born than people were dying. Okay? And he said, and this is really, really important because this is true to this day, is that population size is limited by resources, such as the food, right? So think of the polar bears, they're saying that they're starving, and that's because their food supply, right, is diminishing. So as their food supply goes away, the polar bears are starting to die off. Okay, that's this idea of population size. And he said this is true even for humans. So he reasoned that if a human population continued to grow unchecked, sooner or later there would be insufficient living space and food for everyone. Now this idea is still around to an extent. Malthus predicted that I apologize, I can't remember the year, that at a certain point, when the population reached a certain size, that the earth would no longer be habitable. We've surpassed that number years and years and years and years and years ago, because the theme Malthus did not count on, and this is something you'll talk about in economics, is that he did not count on the advancement of technology. With the advancement of technology, we are able to speed up the food process, the making of food, the distribution of food. We're even able, living space, we're able to build apartments. We're able to build high risers that can contain a lot of people. He didn't factor that in, right? He didn't foresee those changes when it comes to humans. He said, however, assuming that it did, think of the earth, and assume that we are running out of food. The whole earth is running out of food, and that we're so crowded there's no place to live. People will start to die, right? They're going to start to die because there's not enough food, so they're going to starve. Maybe there's not enough living space, so they literally don't have space, for water or sleeping or what have you. This will cause people to die. So the death rate will increase to balance out into the population size. Okay. So Darwin realized that this idea was also visible in nature. We kind of talked about this a little bit with the lions, and we think about, what happens to a food chain. If all the plants were to die off, how would that affect a food chain? Um, Darwin saw this with the plants and animals that they produce four more offspring that can be supported. However, most offspring die. Think of animals. Not when they have babies in the wild. Not all of them survive. A lot of them can be, if they don't have access to water, a lot of them can be eaten by predators. So these things happen. This is one of the reasons why the earth is not overrun with animals.